5 sinister true stories of terrifying isolation. Discover the haunted secrets of the night. The creaky old house stood alone on the edge of Hickory Grove. Its once bright paint now a faded whisper of pink, peeling like the memories inside. Clara, back to where her childhood echoes still haunted the air, felt a shiver run down her spine. Ghostly secrets burrowed in the walls, secrets she hoped to leave buried. When you live in a place untouched by the bustling world, the silence can feel like a scream. Jake was excited to explore his new school, but Clara felt the weight of every shadow lurking just beyond the trees. The town felt off-kilter, like a broken compass spinning wildly. She made small talk with the locals, but every friendly smile seemed to hide something darker. Clara unearthed whispers of missing townsfolk, names slurred over in conversation. Hesitations lingered too long. When she dared to broach the topic, laughter bubbled nervously into the air like gas escaping a balloon that had been tied too tightly. Mr. Brooks had always been mentioned in hushed tones. The handyman who knew too much, his presence felt but rarely acknowledged. What was it about Hickory Grove that put frost on her heart? Just after the sun dipped below the horizon, Clara heard footsteps outside. A light rustle, something breathing heavy and low. Her heart raced, cold sweat trickling down her back. Shadows stretched toward her, and she sat in the living room, straining to catch the slightest sound. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As night enveloped Clara, she felt like a pet trapped in a cage, her world closing in. Jake came home with wild stories. He swore he saw a figure lurking near their property. Clara brushed off his complaints, fearing the isolation had birthed monsters in their minds. But what if the real monsters wore smiles, foraging for trust? The police shrugged her off, shrugging like she was just another worrywart in a town that thrived on secrets. Determined to confront her fear, Clara ventured to the edge of their property, where darkness thickened into an almost tangible weight. Moonlight filtered through the branches, casting eerie shadows. She gasped, catching a glimpse of a figure standing in the woods, still and watchful. Panic clawed at her throat. She called for Jake, but he was inside, muffled laughter spilling from another room, completely oblivious to the nightmare outside. As Clara's racing heart pounded in her ears, she stepped closer. The whispers of her childhood returned, swirling in the soft breeze. Then she saw it, a glimmer of eyes reflecting the moonlight, blacker than the pitch around it, full of a hunger she could not understand. It hit her like a stone, the horrifying realization that safety was just an illusion. And as darkness cloaked Hickory Grove, all she could think was, will they come for Jake next? The wind howled through the trees, a mournful sound that chased away any semblance of peace Clara had found in the daylight. She stood frozen, her breath hitching in her throat as the figure remained motionless, seemingly tasting the darkness around it. Was it watching her? Every instinct screamed at her to run, to flee back inside where Jake was, where the world felt just a bit safer. But something held her in place, curiosity laced with dread. Shadows moved, undulating in a rhythm that almost felt alive. Clara squinted, trying to understand what she was seeing. Just as she thought she might call again for Jake, the figure shifted. No longer a silhouette, it took a step forward, revealing features that twisted in the absence of light, hollow cheeks, and a mouth pulled tight as if stitched together. Clara gasped, stumbling back, the earthy smell of damp leaves filling her nostrils. Her heart hammered, each beat echoing in the stillness, the sound swallowed by the darkness. The figure moved again, a shiver running down Clara's spine like icy fingers. It stopped at the edge of her vision, glancing to the side, as if expecting someone else to emerge from the shadows. "Jake!" she shouted, louder than she intended, panic surging through her. The laughter from within the house ceased, replaced by a suffocating silence that hung in the air. There was no response. Every instinct told her to run inside, away from whatever horror lurked outside. But what if Jake was in danger? What if the thing, whatever it was already waiting for him inside? Clara took a step back, heart racing, her mind a chaotic mess. She couldn't stay there, and yet she couldn't abandon Jake. The figure seemed to sense her turmoil, moving ever so slightly closer, a predator circling its prey. Suddenly, a door creaked open, the sound slicing through the thick night air. Clara's heart dropped. Jake stood at the entrance, framed by the soft glow of the hall light, blissfully unaware of the horror at the edge of their property. "What's wrong, Clara?" he called, tilting his head, confused. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "No, stay inside," she screamed, but it came out strangled and filled with urgency. She could see it now. The figure had paused, its glimmering eyes now locked on Jake. Jake only squinted into the darkness, clearly debating whether to step outside or not. Clara could barely breathe, her eyes darting between Jake and the thing creeping closer, the tension leaving her trembling. "Clara, what are you talking about?" Before she could scream again, the figure dashed out of sight. Clara's pulse raced as she realized it had moved to the side, disappearing behind the trees. "Jake, close the door. Now." But he hesitated. "What did you see?" Terror clawed at her throat, suffocating her. She couldn't explain it. She could barely even understand it herself. That thing had a grip on her, worming its way into her mind, even as she tried to push it away. Just then, from somewhere deep within the woods, came a low growl, deep and resonant, vibrating through the ground. It sounded like the earth itself was warning them. A growl that froze her blood and filled Jake's eyes with sudden fear. Clara lunged toward Jake, her heart racing. "We need to go inside." In that moment, the world erupted in chaos, the growling crescendo shifting into a terrifying screech that sent every hair on her arms standing on end. A sound echoed through the darkness, a single chilling thought flashing through her mind. The true horror was no longer just outside. As Clara turned to drag Jake back inside, the air thickened, and the shadows stretched out, hungry for something more than just a glimpse. "Clara, what's happening?" Jake's voice trembled, and Clara could only stare into the night, knowing something was watching, waiting. But what awaited them was far worse than they could ever imagine. Would they survive the night? Clara's grip tightened around Jake's wrist, panic seeping into her every heartbeat. She needed him to understand, to feel the weight of the danger that loomed in the shadows. The growl faded, replaced by a tense silence that wrapped around them like a noose. "Clara, I don't," Jake started. But another sound erupted from the woods, a rustling that felt deliberate, predator and prey in a sinister dance. The air pulsed with unease, heavy with threats unspoken. She tugged at him, desperate. "Close the door," she shrieked again, her voice cracking, yet it felt both feeble and urgent. The shadows whispered privilege, coiling closer, thickening their presence. Without thinking, Jake stepped outside, the door swinging shut behind him. The light illuminating their yard flickered a stutter of warmth in the encroaching cold. Clara's heart sank as dread pooled in her stomach, but he faltered only for a moment, squinting into the darkness as if trying to make sense of what was wrong. The figure lurked just beyond the edge, a flicker of movement that sent chills racing up Clara's spine. Adrenaline surged. She sensed they were being surrounded, moments away from a nightmare that had only begun to unfold. "Say something," Jake demanded, voice suddenly low, laced with frustration. Clara's breath caught in her throat again, swapping the words she needed for the indecipherable sounds the shadows made. "It's not just a trick of your eyes. We have to get back in. Now." She yanked him with all her strength, but he remained locked in place, a mix of disbelief and confrontation breaking through his eyes. "What do you see?" he pressed, voice hardening. It was a question drowning in fear. Clara turned her gaze back to the foliage, knowing it needed to be said, but the truth solidified in silence, heavier than stone. Just then, a whisper snaked through the wind, barely audible yet sharp enough to slice through the tension. "Jake." The name carried with it a weight that clawed through the air, an insistence just on the other side of the veil. Suddenly, the growl erupted again, this time blaring and fierce. As if finally giving in to the dark, the figure lunged from the forest, the jagged nightmare materializing between the shadows and their truth. Clara gasped. The sight of it sent her heart racing, hair matted, flesh gleaming sickly in the dull light, eyes burning at a feral angle that seemed to pull Jake in. She saw fear flood his expression, realization dawning that this was no ordinary trick of the light. "Clara!" he yelled, shaking off his paralysis. He could finally sense it, feel the danger saturating the night air. "Get inside." Clara spun, feeling the cold breath of panic brushing against the nape of her neck. "Jake, don't you!" But her warning was swallowed by the screech of the trees bending, as if the woods themselves turned. Branches clawed at the sky, thrumming a rhythm of chaos. Jake's eyes widened. He stumbled back a step, heart racing. "What do you want?" he shouted, voice cracking as he faced the entity. The figure edged closer, an unnatural, unsettling gait that sent Clara's stomach churning with a sense of dread unlike any other. It paused as if measuring them, a grin twisting the corners of its mouth, mocking. Clara closed the door. She felt time splinter into chaos, her instinct kicking in. But as she turned, shadows flickered around her, and a sharp pain seared her hand. She felt it claws, or fingers that shouldn't touch gripped her tightly, dragging her toward the darkness. Clara! She felt her body latch onto the ground beneath her instinctively, the earth whispering promises of safety, even as the light flickered from the house. With a surge of adrenaline, she reached for the door. But the grip of the shadows tightened, pulling her back from what she desperately needed. "Help!" was all she could manage to scream, a shout drowned beneath the screeching winds and the laughter that bore down on them. In that moment, time screamed of choice: stay outside with Jake or yield to the shadows reaching for her. And then, just as suddenly as it began, silence fell. The air thickened with uncertainty, and the world hung in the balance. "Clara, please." Jake was pleading now, straining against the atmosphere thick with tension. But what awaited them beyond? What shadowed consciousness waited in the dark? As the figures melded together, Clara understood with horrific clarity that the darkness was only a part of what was to come. "Remember, we can't let it escape." What did that mean? And who would truly escape the night? The silence was unnerving. Clara's breath echoed in the stillness, the night pressing in like a suffocating blanket. Gritting her teeth, she pulled against the grip that held her, but it only tightened. Fear clawed at her stomach, taking her breath away. The shadows shifted and writhed, and the figure loomed closer, its presence a dark promise of malice. "Jake!" she gasped, the urgency in her voice piercing through her rising panic. Yet, Jake stood frozen, caught between the light of the house and the darkness creeping near. His expression morphed into one of primal fear as the creature drew nearer, inches away, revealing a twisted face that shouldn't exist in reality. Its teeth were long, jagged, and crude, each one a reminder of its hunger. "Get back!" Jake yelled, summoning what courage he could. The command felt weak against the overpowering force of the night, but something in his voice managed to rattle Clara. She tried to summon her own strength, fought against the unseen claws that kept pulling her into the abyss. "We have to go. We have to," but the words tangled in her throat, swallowed by the growl that reverberated through the darkness, raw and primal. "Clara!" Jake's voice was a lifeline. He sprinted toward her, but the shadows acted like a whip, twisting around him. Suddenly, a surge of energy erupted from him, as if the essence of survival sparked between them. It was electric, heightening Clara's instincts. "Clara, trust me, jump." He reached for her, and in that moment, the shadows loosened their grip just a fraction. She lunged forward, stretching every muscle in her body. "Now!" Jake shouted. With a final desperate leap, Clara crossed the threshold back to the safety of light, just as the figure lunged, snapping its teeth like a wild predator. A searing pain shot through her arm as she barely slipped past the door. The weight of the night crashed upon the wooden barrier, an unsettling silence settling as they gasped for breath. The vacuum of the calm felt wrong. Clara pressed her back against the door, fear gripping her still. What was that? Jake's eyes were wide, flickering with disbelief. I don't know, he stammered, his voice trembling. No, you felt it. That was real. But as she spoke, the shadows seemed to pulse against the door, whispering her name, luring her into their depths. Clara felt the dark energy swirl, trailing cold fingers against the edges of her mind. Jake, she said, her voice rising, a hysterical edge creeping in. We can't stay here. What do you mean? He replied, confusion masking his fear. The flickering lights played tricks around them. Deep inside, Clara knew it wasn't safe. Not here. It won't stop. Whatever that was, it wants us. We need to leave. Jake glanced around, the shadows creeping with an unholy thirst at the corners of the room. The door shuddered again. This time a low thud, more insistent, more determined. She could feel every breath he took, the urgency of the moment wrapping around them. We can't go out there. It's waiting, Jake asserted, but uncertainty coated his words. A howl echoed from outside, sharp and clear, weaving through the air like a noose. Clara jumped, instinctively feeling the dread crawl under her skin. What if it finds us inside? Jake's expression shifted from fear to something more profound, a dawning realization. Then we'll have no choice but to fight. We can't let it take us. Just then, a deafening bang erupted against the door, with splintering under the force. Everything shifted. Clara's heart raced, eyes wide, and she glanced toward the windows. Outside, a pair of eyes shimmered, glowing and hungry, watching them with feral anticipation. Stay back, Jake shouted, bracing himself against the entrance. Maybe it needs an invitation, Clara whispered, a horrifying thought taking root. Don't say that, he barked, but the shadows outside roared in approval, closing in with malicious laughter. What if it's not just here? What if it has infiltrated? Clara's voice faltered as the implications spiraled in her mind. They weren't just battling a creature of the night. They were fighting something larger, an embodiment of darkness that wanted to break through every barrier, trapping them in its sinister web. As the door cracked under pressure, the entities beyond seemed to merge into a nightmarish swirl of claws and teeth, the air growing thick with the promise of terror. Clara's heart thudded in her chest. Jake, we have to. But even she hesitated to speak the words they both feared to acknowledge. Face what's outside or surrender to the night. Behind them, the walls seemed to breathe. What if the darkness was already here, hidden among the familiar shadows? She could feel it gnawing at her sanity, the realization that the real terror had only just begun. The door buckled again, a vicious crack echoing through the small room. Clara turned, instincts screaming, and saw the shadows coiling against the broken wood like living tendrils eager to consume them both. Panic struck her. Jake, we can't hold them off forever. Help me. His voice was frantic, and for a moment, Clara felt the weight of his fear crashing into her. It anchored her in a strange way. She couldn't allow herself to break down. But as she faced the encroaching darkness, the shadows whispered promises of despair, wrapping around her thoughts, making her doubt everything. The howl outside intensified, more guttural and primal. A dark symphony of terror orchestrated by the unseen entity hunting them. Clara's heart thudded louder in synchrony with the visceral fear racing through her veins. What if it can't get in? She asked, her voice trembling, barely above a whisper. Jake searched her eyes, desperation clawing at his throat. Then we need to find a way to fight. We can't let it take over. Thunder erupted from the heavens with an unnatural crack, shaking the windows. Clara winced, gritting her teeth as the shadows writhed around the edges of her vision. No longer confined to the door, they slithered toward the corners of the room, seeping into the very walls. As if the house itself was becoming a malevolent entity. What do we even fight with? Clara's throat was tight, her mind racing for solutions that felt increasingly impossible. There's gotta be something here, Jake grunted, ripping furniture aside, his eyes wild. A weapon? Anything. The sense of urgency pressed down like a weight on their shoulders. With every passing moment, the shadows closed in, whispering their dark lullaby. Clara's gaze landed on a rusty fire poker leaning against the fireplace. It was an imperfect weapon, but in desperation it was better than nothing. "Jake, over here." She pointed, and without hesitation, he grabbed it, the metal glinting in the dim light. The door bucked again, this time with a force that rattled their bones. Clara's pulse raced. "We don't have much time." Jake turned to her, eyes fierce with determination. "If we can push it back, maybe we can make it out through the back door." She opened her mouth to argue when the shadows erupted through the crack, lunging at them with a swift, chilling speed. The grotesque face emerged, its twisted features contorted in a rictus of hunger. "Now!" Jake shouted, slashing at the darkness. The poker met the shadows, and an inhuman shriek echoed, reverberating through their bones. It recoiled, momentarily halted. Clara felt the rush of adrenaline kick in, a spark of hope igniting within her. "Again," she urged, gripping Jake's arm, heart pounding as the air thickened with dread. "We can't let it take us." Jake swung again, and Clara joined him, their movements synchronized with the terror that ebbed and flowed in waves around them. Every strike sent a shriek rippling through the entity, churning in a palpable fury. But the moment of relief was fleeting. A massive slam reverberated against the door, splinters cascading down as if the very essence of darkness sought to invade. Clara stepped back, dread bubbling within her. "It's not backing down. We need a plan." "Then we find the source," Jake replied, his determination hardening. "Whatever is calling this thing, we have to stop it." She nodded as they turned to the shadows, a swirling mass of terror still looming. But more than fear, fear was mixed with the crackling pulse of something deeper, something sinister awakening. As they fought against the encroaching darkness, Clara grasped a flicker of an idea that crawled in the corners of her mind. "The basement," she whispered, horrified as realization settled on her. "It might be down there. Then that's where we'll go." But as he stepped towards the door, the shadows cackled, bulging with malice, and Clara felt the walls around them close in, suffocating and alive. "Jake!" she cried, panic surging. "What if we're walking into a trap?" The door shuddered violently. The shadows were pressing in from every direction. Now, a sigh of their haunting chorus promising doom. "There's no other choice." Jake's resolve shimmered with something fierce. "We face it, together." With that, the door burst open, revealing blackness that felt thick enough to choke on. Clara's heart raced. Outside, the abyss awaited. Inside, shadows writhed, ready to consume. Which was worse? As they hesitated, uncertain of their next move, an unsettling quiet fell, wrapping around them like a cold, clammy hand. What if nothing awaited them but a deeper doom? "Let us go," Jake yelled as he plunged into the darkness outside. Clara's heart dropped. She had to follow him into the void or they would succumb. The air shattered with a chilling, familiar howl as they stepped into uncertainty. But nothing could prepare them for what waited at the bottom of the stairs. Clara's breath hitched in her throat as they descended the creaking stairs, the darkness enveloping them like a suffocating shroud. Each step echoed ominously, a foreboding reminder of what lay just beyond the light. She fumbled to keep pace with Jake, fear clawing at her insides. What awaited them in the basement? The walls whispered her fears back to her. She clutched the rusted fire poker like a lifeline. "Jake, wait," she said, voice trembling. He paused, turning back to her, the dim glow of their flashlight barely reaching his determined features. "What if it's worse down there?" His expression hardened, yet the flicker of doubt was there just beneath the surface. "We can't let fear win. We have to know." Before she could answer, the darkness stirred, responding to their hesitation. A low, menacing growl reverberated through the basement, rippling across the air like a palpable force. The shadows writhed, and for a moment, Clara thought she could see them shift, taking on grotesque shapes. A blast of cold air snaked around her ankles, raising goosebumps on her skin. "Let us go," Jake urged, pushing past his own fear. taking another step down. Clara followed, feeling the very essence of the house pulse with a life of its own. The oppressive shadows closed in tighter as they reached the bottom, and every instinct inside her screamed to turn back. But she couldn't abandon him. Not now. The basement stretched before them, an abyss of swirling darkness. Clara flicked the flashlight beam across the walls, revealing damp, rotting wood and discarded relics, old tools, shattered furniture, remnants of a life long abandoned. An unsettling chill settled in the air, thick and suffocating. "What are we looking for?" Clara whispered, her voice barely breaking the silence. "I don't know," Jake admitted, scanning the corners for any sign of the malevolent force. "But whatever is causing this, it could be here." Suddenly, a loud crash echoed through the space, reverberating like thunder. Clara jumped, heart slamming against her chest. A large crate tipped over in the far corner, spilling its contents across the floor. Dust billowed into the air, but it was not the dust that caught her attention. A glint in the darkness. Something shiny. Jake stepped forward, the flashlight beam revealing a small, ornate box half buried beneath debris. "Look at this," he murmured, bending down to pick it up. Clara's stomach twisted with unease. "Jake, wait," she called, fear tightening her throat. "What if it's what the shadows want? Could be the key to ending this," he insisted, flipping the box open. The moment the lid creaked, a harrowing shriek erupted from the shadows, louder and more enraged than anything they had heard before. Clara stumbled back, the shadows leaping forward, snapping and clawing at the air like creatures unleashed from torment. She could feel their icy breath brushing against her skin, teeth bared in grotesque smiles. "Jake!" she screamed, the fire poker shaking in her grip as the shadows surged closer, forming clawed hands seeking to pull them into the embrace of despair. She fought against the instinct to flee, but terror rooted her to the spot. Jake's eyes widened, understanding dawning. "We have to close it. Now." He tried to slam the box shut, but it felt as though something was holding it open, an unseen force strong enough to challenge his grip. The shadows convulsed, a chaotic symphony of whispers filling her ears, taunting and tempting. Clara's heart raced as she fought through the storm of fear swirling within. The darkness felt alive, a sentient nightmare intent on consuming everything. "Hold on," Clara yelled, lunging forward with the fire poker towards the shadows. It struck where the darkness surged, cracking like thunder. The shriek intensified, exploding into chaos. Yet, as they fought, something sinister began to unfold. A heavy, ominous laugh echoed around them from the depths of the shadows. A sound that didn't belong to the basement but to something much older, much darker. "Do you think you can stop this?" The voice boomed, and Clara's blood ran cold. What had they awoken? Instinct screamed for them to flee, but Jake's frantic eyes met hers with an intensity that froze her in place. "We need to go deeper," he shouted, but as they glanced back toward the stairs, a wall of shadows had risen, sealing off their escape. With nowhere left to hide, they faced the storm together, but what inhuman power awaited them in the dark abyss? Screaming for their surrender? Clara gripped Jake's hand, fear and resolve intertwining. "Whatever's down here, we have to confront it. We can't let it win." Together, their hearts pounded like war drums against the unending night around them. They had to push deeper, but what fresh horrors lay in wait? The box pulsed ominously in Jake's hands, glowing with a sinister light, hinting at the truth they weren't ready to face. Jake's grip tightened around the box as if it were a lifeline, but it pulsed with energy, shaking in his hands like a trapped creature. The shadows contorted closer, their whispers sharp and malicious, a cacophony of dread washing over them. Clara felt every heartbeat throbbing in her throat, an unrelenting drum signaling impending doom. "Clara, hold the light," Jake commanded, wrestling with the box as it threatened to slip from his fingers. She rushed forward, lifting the flashlight high, illuminating the mass of swirling darkness that coiled like smoke. The beam cut through the shadows, but the glow brought little comfort. The shadows merely flinched, regrouping, forming grotesque figures flickering just beyond the edges of perception. "There's something alive in there," Clara murmured, eyes darting to the pulsating box, its ornate carvings gleaming in the weak light. "Whatever it is, we have to figure out how to close it," Jake responded, desperation coating his voice. "It's like the shadows want to feed off it." A sudden crash echoed through the basement, rattling the air with tremors. Clara looked back. A shadowy tendril stretched toward their flashlight, snap-like fingers reaching for the fragile light source, as if the darkness itself were alive and desperate for power. "Jake! They're coming!" Clara shouted, panic surging like a tide. "I know! Keep the light steady. I need to concentrate," he yelled, eyes narrowing at the box. With renewed determination, Jake pressed his fingers against the lid, struggling against the unseen force that fought to keep it open. The whispers crescendoed to a roar, a heartbeat of chaos that clamored in their ears, curling dark thoughts around their minds. The voice from the shadows rumbled again, taunting, "You cannot resist what you cannot see, shut up." Clara screamed, swinging the fire poker wildly into the void, the iron screeching as it sliced through the air. The shadows recoiled, but the sound of her panic only fueled their wrath. "Almost there," Jake growled, sweat streaming down his forehead as he put every ounce of strength into slamming the lid shut. The box wobbled, straining under the pressure, and for a moment, Clara thought they might succeed. But then, a horrific shriek echoed, reverberating in the depths of her mind, and the shadows surged forward once more. Clara turned to the darkness, raising the poker defensively. "Get back! Get away from us!" But her voice felt weak in the face of the growling abyss, the palpable terror pulling on her very soul. The atmosphere thickened, pressing down hard on their chests. Clara gazed at Jake, his eyes wide with fear yet sparkling with defiance. Together, he breathed, almost a prayer as they worked in unison. On three. 1, 2, 3. With all their strength, they slammed the lid down. There was a moment of deafening silence, and then the box exploded open, shards of wood flying through the air. A blinding light shot upwards, illuminating the basement in hues of sickly green and yellow, washing over them in waves. The shadows screamed, contorting as if in agony, retreating towards the walls. Clara stumbled backward, light overwhelming her senses. "What is happening?" Jake shielded his eyes, scrambling to his feet as the shadows began to dissolve, revealing ancient markings on the walls, symbols of a dark ritual long forgotten. Their eyes widened in horror as they read the words. "Feed, consume, awaken, no," Jake whispered, realization dawning. "We unleashed something terrible then." As the light faded, a chilling stillness fell across the basement. Clara steadied herself, heart thunderous in her ears. "What did we do?" she whispered, dread pooling in her stomach. Suddenly, an almost tangible presence filled the space, its weight pressing in on them, chilling to the bone. The laughter returned, but now it sounded closer, more sinister. "You've opened the door now, you can never go back." With trembling hands, Jake darted forward, trying to shield Clara from the creeping darkness that bled into their makeshift sanctuary. "We need to find some way to seal it again." But as they turned back to the box, a new horror awaited them. The shadows had coalesced into a figure tall, grotesque, and with an inhuman grin that twisted beneath a dark, matted hood. A chill swept through Clara, paralyzing her where she stood. It extended a bony finger towards them. "Join us," it crooned, voice dripping with malevolence. Clara's heart plummeted. In the midst of the swirling fears and breaking sanity, she realized that their fight was far from over. How could they defeat something that thrived on their despair? The box shuddered ominously, still pulsing with an energy that could spell disaster. We have to run," Jake shouted, but the shadows were closing in again, reforming the barrier that trapped them in this hell. What would they do now? The darkness deepened, and Clara could sense the world around them collapsing into nightmares. "Jake, we can't," but his voice rang out loud and fierce. "We fight back. We have to confront it." As they faced whatever horror was emerging, Clara wondered if one battle could ever be won. How far were they willing to go to survive? The figure loomed closer, the shadows swirling around it, pulsating with a life of their own. Clara's pulse quickened, fingers tightening on the fire poker. "What do you want from us?" she shouted, her voice trembling despite her bravado. The creature tilted its head, the grin stretching impossibly wide, revealing a void where teeth should be. "Your fears are delicious," it hissed, the sound like nails scraping over glass. "Join us or become our meal." Jake stepped forward, shaking his head defiantly. "Get back." He swung the flashlight desperately, the beam flickering like a candle in the storm of darkness. The creature recoiled slightly, as if the light was an unbearable sting. "Stay in the light," Clara urged, backing toward him, the shadows creeping forward as if trying to devour their last shred of hope. The basement felt alive, breathing, pulsing with hunger. "Clara, we need to figure out how to close the box again," Jake shouted over the oppressive whispers that clawed at their minds. "Those markings, they're key." Clara's breath hitched as she glanced at the walls again, frantic thoughts racing. But how? There's too much darkness. The shadows thickened, shifting into shapes, twisted figures of past victims vying for attention. Sawdust snagged in her throat as she recognized distorted faces. "Jake! Look! They're trapped," Jake muttered, realization slamming into him. "Like us. We can't let that happen." His eyes darted back to the box, now a pulsing heart of impending doom. "We have to get the lid," Clara exclaimed, her stomach churning. They were fighting against an entity willing to consume their very essence. Before they could act, a sudden tremor shook the ground beneath them. The creature lurched forward, its fingers stretching toward Jake with an unnatural speed. "You think light can save you? Join us." Clara lunged, shoving her shoulder against Jake, forcing him backwards as the wretched fingers nearly grazed his skin. She slammed the poker against the wooden floor, sparks flying. "We need to fight." With renewed courage, both of them centered on the box. Jake gripped the edges, teeth gritting as he bent low, nightmarish energy swirling around him, driving daggers of panic deep into his heart. "Grab the lid," he cried, pulling it closer. The shadows clawed at it, desperate to remain open, howling in rebellion. Clara hurled the poker aside and dove to help him, fingers brushing against the cool wood. "We can't let it win," she yelled, adrenaline coursing through her. Together, they lifted the lid, an explosion of light erupting once more, illuminating the basement in frenzied flares that repelled the dark. But the horror surged, the figure twisting in the light with shrieks that sliced through the air. "You think you can stop this? I will consume your souls." "No," Jake roared. They fought against the pull, even as their breaths quickened and despair swept through them like a vicious tide. The figure jerked violently, distorting as if being pulled between two worlds. Clara's heart raced with dread and determination. Focus on the markings. They're preventing it from coming fully through. Jake nodded, staring into the chaotic abyss the figure originated from. "We can turn this against it." And just like that, a plan crackled in the air. They needed to channel their fear, to confront the darkness with purpose. "Stand strong," Jake urged, raising the lid higher. Clara pointed the flashlight at the markings, willing their power to surge. "We will turn you back. Do you think you can reverse the ritual?" The creature howled, rage spilling from it like molten metal. "What choice do we have?" Clara screamed, her resolve hardening. In that moment, the shadows writhed, darkness tightening like a noose around them as they struggled to maintain the light. Clara felt a tremor of realization bubbling beneath her panic. "Jake, what if we need to confront our fears? What if that's why it shows us the victims?" As if reading her mind, the abyss ripped wider, and the faces of the lost began to reach out to them, twisted and deformed. "Join us," they wailed, voices blending into a cacophony of despair. "No, we fight," Jake screamed defiantly, pushing back against the tide of shadows. Clara could feel the heat of fear washing over her. Could they truly confront their demons before it was too late? The darkness churned, their greatest fears clawing at the edges of their sanity. "Stay with me," Jake called, and Clara felt her breath hitch. The shadows locked tighter around them. "We will consume your light, What awaited them at the final confrontation? Would their fears be the key, or the end of everything? The roar of shadows threatened to swallow every ounce of light as Clara and Jake clung to the box, their hearts pounding like war drums. The incandescent glow from the markings was their only hope, a fragile thread amidst chaos. Sweat dripped from Clara's brow, pooling at her temples, thick and cold, while dread clawed at her gut. "I don't know how much longer we can hold this," Jake gasped, teeth clenched against the strain. The creature lunged forward again, its hollow maw opening wider, ready to ingest them whole. "Just keep pushing," Clara shouted, her eyes wild as she braced herself against the lid. "Look at the symbols. We can do this." The shadows howled around them, despairing wails suffocating the air. But within the chaos lay the flickering remnants of courage. As each wave of darkness crashed against their resolve, Clara's mind flickered back to her childhood. Nights spent shivering from the monsters that trailed in her dreams. "This is just like then, face it," she whispered to herself. "You were never afraid of the shadows." Suddenly, the walls seemed to close in, echoes of distorted memories flooding her thoughts, her brother's laughter, twisted into cries, faces of once familiar friends now turned hollow. "They're trying to get inside my head." Desperation surged as she forced her eyes back to Jake. "What if we can summon their strength? Their memories can take the fight to the rest of this darkness." Jake's eyes widened, realization dawning. "Yes, together, let us bring them back." He channeled his voice into a rallying cry. "We are not afraid. We remember you." The shadows' shifted figures began to materialize from the blackness, flickering like candle flames caught in a tempest. At first, they were a jumbled blur, but then faces formed. Friends, family, victims lost to the dark. Clara recognized her childhood best friend, her brother cradling his skateboard, laughter extinguished too soon. "Join us," the phantoms echoed, voices crashing around them like a thunderstorm. Their presence grew stronger, merging with Clara and Jake's resolve, filling the basement with a blinding light that pulsed in time with their hearts. "But we can't," Clara yelled. "You left us. We need you to fight." Jake released the box momentarily, grasping for her hand. "We're doing this together. You're more than your fears." As their palms clasped, another wave surged. The creature convulsed, its primal rage roaring against the light. "You think you can summon the dead? I will shake their very essence until they forget you." Clara's chest tightened, but she didn't falter. "You don't own them. They chose life, just as we have." She felt them, his brother and childhood friend, intertwining their strength with hers. The void around them throbbed, the tension daring to snap as the darkness screamed, lashing out as if losing a battle it had never seen coming. Through the chaos, Clara felt a shift. A sudden clarity pierced her mind. The creature fed on despair not just from them, but from the lost souls it claimed. "Jake, it's not just our fear, but our hope that can weaken it. We need to shout it louder." With renewed fervor, they shouted together, voices merging, reverberating like a vast echo. "We will not join you. We choose life." The shadows recoiled, resistance wavering as the warmth of hope spilled from them, creating a shield that radiated brighter than ever before. Then, in that blinding moment, everything changed. Clara noticed how the box began to pulse like a heartbeat, the markings on its surface glowing fiercely. The faces of the lost shimmered, filling the space with something pure, something strong. And as the figure writhed in agony, the basement trembled, shadows curling around in defeat. "You think this ends here? You can never win," it screeched. But there was something frantic, something fading in its vow. Then everything snapped. The light surged with an explosive energy, engulfing them in radiance. The creature howled in fury, a sound like rending fabric amidst the rush. Clara and Jake shielded their eyes, the illumination surpassing anything they had ever known, fracturing the darkness into pieces until it shattered like glass. All that remained were whispers, haunting yet reassuring. But, just as they began to breathe, the air around them shifted. A cold chill crept through the new cracks of light. "Is it really over?" Jake whispered, the warmth of the fight still coursing through him, but uncertainty gnawed at him. What if this was just the first step? As they turned to each other, the basement fell into an unnerving silence, the glow of the box fading softly. Something unseen lingered in the scattered shadows. Waiting Clara? Jake's voice cracked. What if there's more to come? And somewhere in the layers of darkness, a new whisper began. The basement once filled with cacophonous whispers and writhing shadows now hung muted. Yet the weight of uncertainty pressed heavily against Clara and Jake. They exchanged wary glances, hearts still pounding from the sheer adrenaline of their confrontation. Could it be over? Had they truly won against the dark malevolence that had threatened to consume them? Jake stepped back from the remnants of the shattered box, the pieces glimmering dimly on the dust-covered floor. "I can't believe we did it," he whispered, disbelief shadowing his features. Yet, even as those words left his lips, Clara could feel something swirl in the air, a sense of anticipation bubbling beneath the surface, refusing to fade. Clara advanced toward the remnants, striving to keep her fear at bay. But it didn't just disappear, it's like something shifted. "We broke part of it free." Her voice quivered as she recalled the creature's taunts, echoing their fear before twisting it into a weapon against them. Just as she finished speaking, a frigid draft swept through the basement, snuffing out remnants of warmth. The walls began to tremble, groaning as if they were awakening from a long slumber. Dust fell like tired tears. "What's happening?" Jake exclaimed, alarm rising in his voice. "Stay close," Clara commanded, the fire poker firmly in hand once again. She felt a surge of determination coursing through her veins. They could not falter now. They had faced darkness and stared into its hollow eyes. Sweeping her flashlight over the perimeter, she pointed it towards the trembling shadows. "Show yourself." In response, a distant, familiar laughter echoed through the shadows, taunting them as it emerged from unseen corners, the mocking cry of a memory stained with terror. Clara recognized it as the laughter of those lost, trapped in the shadows' hungry grasp, almost inviting her to embrace fear one more time. "Not now," Jake shouted, his voice strong against the growing onslaught of whispers. "Focus." But the shadows stirred, seeking resolve in Clara's heart. "You're just delaying the inevitable," hissed their voices, a symphony of despair, caressing the edges of her sanity. "You think you can escape us? I won't let you have him," Clara roared, stepping forward to block Jake from the encroaching darkness. He raised the flashlight, casting a desperate glow towards the horror that threatened to rise once more. But Jake faltered, the weight of uncertainty crashing down on him. What if this isn't over?" he murmured, doubt pooling in his voice. Clara forced herself to breathe, fearful thoughts clamoring for attention in her mind. "We defeated it once. We can do it again. Together." She took a bold step toward the swirling darkness, her inner light standing defiant. Just then, a piercing shriek erupted from the darkness as fragmented shadows coalesced, reforming into lurking figures, their hollow eyes glimmering with a predatory hunger. "We've only just begun," they advanced, and Clara's heart raced, the atmosphere thickening with the pressure of oncoming dread. "Back!" Jake yelled, brandishing the flashlight, but this time it flickered ominously, dimming as the shadows drew closer. They needed to rekindle the light inside to summon that fierce, unyielding spirit that had seen them through the night. "Hold on to each other," Clara shouted, reaching for Jake, who was now quaking in fear, doubt clouding his thoughts as shadows clawed at the edges of their sanctuary. With trembling hands, they clasped tightly, anchoring each other in resolve. "Whatever it takes, we stand together," Clara declared, an urgent fire igniting within her chest. As their hearts synchronized, Clara felt their collective fears intertwine, swelling to match the intensity of the approaching darkness. "We won't let you take us," Jake proclaimed, his voice steadying, reflecting the determination flooding through them both. The shadows recoiled, hissing in defiance. "Foolish children. You cannot win. You're bound here." But Clara remembered the radiance of the hope they had summoned before, the strength found in facing their fears alongside the spirits of those they had lost. This is not just our fight. You draw life from us, but we give it to those we love. And something shifted within the depths of the abyss. An image materialized in a swirl of light, a figure from the past materialized alongside the lost faces they had conjured. Clara's brother stood there, arms open wide, a beacon of light amidst encroaching night. You are never alone. His voice broke through the darkness, shimmering with strength. Join us, Clara cried, heart racing as she felt her fears coiling around that single spark of love. With every heartbeat, it grew stronger. You cannot take us. We carry them with us. The shadows splintered as the radiance surged, illuminating the basement with ghostly glow that surged through Clara and Jake's intertwined hands, spreading through the darkness to reclaim what had been driven to despair. The shadows roared and twisted, losing form against the tide of light rising from newfound strength. Suddenly, the air became charged. Colors danced in brilliant patterns, swirling and crashing over each other like waves under a beacon. The malevolent figures flickered, the dark laughter morphing into shrill cries as their grip weakened, disintegrating between Clara and Jake as that vital essence thrummed through them. We won't succumb. We refuse. They shouted in unison, their voices blending in a powerful symphony. Light sliced through the night as the phantoms of the lost joined them, an ethereal chorus singing resolute proclamations of love and life. And just like that, the shadows broke, shattering into winds of despair, their cries fading into the ether. The figures of the lost shimmered once again, offering a gentle smile as they began to vanish, their last breaths rising like dandelion seeds into the sky. As the tranquility spread through the basement, Clara collapsed to the ground, breathless. Jake knelt beside her, exhaustion settling in their bones. Yet relief washed over them with the scent of fresh air. Outside, the sunlight broke through the cracks of the house, washing everything in brilliant golden light and piercing through the darkness that had clung to Hickory Grove for far too long. It's over, they breathed, the shadows retreating, unraveling into nothingness. The malevolent laughter silenced at last. But even as Clara looked around, a flicker of light danced at the edges of her consciousness, a warning that lingered like another shadow. A reminder of battles fought and those yet to come. Purpose awakened within her. We have to tell everyone what happened, she murmured, a spark igniting within her. We have to keep others safe, to remind them. Jake looked at her, comprehension dawning, and nodded defiantly. No more secrets. We faced the darkness together. We'll ensure everyone knows the truth. As they stood on the cusp of a new dawn, the shadows receding into whispers of memory, Clara clenched her fists, determined. Together they would carry the light forth, never allowing fear to reign again. And somewhere in the depths of Hickory Grove, the whispering darkness lingered, waiting for that next push into the night. But it would find Clara and Jake ready, their hearts woven tightly together against whatever awaited. Let us go, she said, her voice steadfast, stepping forward as the first rays of sun warmed the worn wood beneath their feet. One battle fought, many more would come, but they would be ready. It was time to break the silence. And more than ever, it was time to shine. If you've followed Clara and Jake through this spine-chilling journey, don't let their story fade into mere whispers. You need to subscribe now to ensure you don't miss our next exclusive stories. Smash that like button now to fuel the algorithm and support our channel. Let us keep exploring these mysterious tales together. Flood the comments section with your thoughts and theories about this haunting conclusion. What do you think awaits our brave characters next? And for the love of suspense, instantly share this video with at least 5 friends who dare to face the darkness. Thank you for it. This is the moment to show your support, and together, we'll illuminate all the dark corners waiting to be uncovered. Don't wait even one more second. Join us on this exhilarating journey.